Not a minute early, not a minute late. Professionalism is the theme tonight. Professionalism, promptness, professionalism. It's the postseason. We'll be on time. We bring excellence. Boom. There we go. Just like that. All right. How about a little bit of postseason firing it in, ladies and gentlemen? I've got the guillotine up here, ready to rock and rolls. We'll give people a couple minutes to filter in here and get ready to talk some Section 1 girls wrestling, talk some Section 1 team tournament. So I pull up the YouTube page and make sure we're actually live. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. This is as polished as it gets. Perfect timing. Boom. There we go. Flusher fixer. All right. Well, just me today. Maybe we'll get a call from Ankle Rider or something like that. I'm not counting on it, though. He's a busy man. He's got kids. He's got goats. He's got sheep. If you guys have thoughts you want to share with me, please do. Fire those into the comments. If you have my phone number, fine. Shoot me a text message. If you are somebody who's been on the show before and you want to fire it in there with a phone call, fire it in there with a phone call. Get those hot wrestling takes out there. The plan is to start with girls. That was my initial thought. We're gonna start with girls wrestling and filter over to the boys team section side of things because that seems natural, right? Girls wrestling sections Friday, Saturday, team seeds come out Sunday. Maybe we follow that pattern. I think that makes some sense. But before I do any of that, I got to move our Culver's logo over to the left side here. Just like such. I don't want it to interfere with the JV Takes logo. All right, awesome. So, yeah, we're going to get some help, though. I thought we would start with girls section, but we're actually going to leave it up to the old wheel of names. The wheel of names, the wheel of topics, I should say. We've got all sorts of good, important, huge, big, beautiful topics on here as we got our first text line messenger tonight. It's my younger brother. He wants to fire in a hot wrestling take before the wheel of topics can even get its first revolution in. He says, Belchester needs to break away from Goodhue and opt up to AAA. Belchester needs to break away from Goodhue and opt up to AAA. Great wrestling take there. Thank you for that one, younger brother. I'm in on it. I think it's going to hurt Goodhue, right? You take away Belchester, you cut the hand off the animal. Actually, Belchester's more than just a hand. You cut off the leg, you separate the head from the torso. Is Goodhue going to be as strong? No, absolutely not. But could Belchester do some serious damage up in AAA? Probably. They know how to do two things in Belchester. They know how to milk cows, and they know how to wrestle. All right. And with that, we're going to move forward. With our first revolution here of the Wheel of Topics, we got all sorts of good things on here. We got our sponsor shout out. We've got a dating life update. We've got girls sections. We've got goats and sheep. If we want to talk goats and sheep, we're going to start with girls section, though. Thank goodness we're going to start with girls sections because we got to be somewhat professional, right? That's the theme tonight is professionalism, so we'll stick with that. All right, girls section. So Friday, Saturday at the Civic Center. I'll plug in there, as always. Alex Vandenhoen had a great write-up, a couple different stories from the Civic Center on Friday and Saturday. First ever girls sectional tournament hosted at the Civic Center, and he had some specific stories, but then an article that was also kind of a notebook-style article. A couple notes on this program, a couple notes on this wrestler, a couple quotes from this coach, and I think that's kind of how I'm going to approach the girls wrestling topic here, or the girls section tournament topic as it is, because you guys already know I'm not a huge individual tournament wrestling guy, but I don't think there's any really silky smooth way to talk about it other than, this team performed like this. Here's a wrestler with this storyline. So we'll treat it as kind of an emptying of the notebook. And I'm going to start with these 3 programs that I think are kind of setting the standard right now in southeastern Minnesota girls wrestling. And, it's a combination of good numbers in the room, community support, and then also some really high-end wrestlers. So I've got 3 programs here. I think 2 of them have gotten a lot of good recognition. One of them, I think, is kind of flying under the radar a little bit right now. Of course, we know what's going on in Chatfield. Chatfield has placed second, of course, up at the Minnesota Wrestling Coaches Association team duels earlier this year. And I think it's a community. Chatfield is a wrestling community that has led to a lot of the support. They've got good numbers. They've got good high-end individuals. With that in mind, it was a bit of a roller coaster for Chatfield on Friday and Saturday. Come out of the gates just a buzzing on Friday. 8 wrestlers into the semifinals. Saturday morning rolls around, lose their first 4 semifinals. When it's all said and done, they did end up sending 5 wrestlers to state. They got a section champ in Kendall Nolte, but it was a little bit of a peak top of the roller coaster. Roller coaster goes down, you bounce back up, and all in all, a very good tournament for Chatfield, but they certainly had to fight for it and get a couple true seconds to make 5 wrestlers to the state tournament, which leads the way out of Section 1. And I mentioned Kendall Nolte. She had probably the most noteworthy, most exciting tournament for Chatfield. She was number 5 seed, went out and won her bracket, and yeah, overall pretty solid, darn good tournament for Chatfield. Just a battle to get to that positive outcome. So another one of the teams that I kind of put in this category would be Pine Island. I thought it was a very good tournament for the Panthers. We were standing there talking with Alex and a couple other wrestling people, and we watched some of those middleweights come through for Pine Island, 124, 130, 136, and after that little stretch, we all kind of looked at each other and were like, it's a pretty good day for Pine Island. So they sent 4 to state. Those 3 that I mentioned at 124, Mallory Mulkey, who I believe was a 3 seed. She was a 3 seed and had just a fantastic tournament, winning a deep, difficult bracket. She had to come back late in her section final. She was down going into the 3rd, battled back to win that one. She had a great tournament. Lauren Ellsmore ended up taking second at 130 to Callie Graber, which a lot of people going to take second to Callie Graber when they're in that bracket. So Madeline Grabow at 136 also advanced to state, and then Maya Ebling at 235 had what I would love to have for a section tournament, a 3-man bracket. You get a bye to the finals. You get your hand raised in the finals. You say, we're going to take that one match, and we're going to head right up to the X. We're going to head right up to Grand Casino Arena. So good tournament for Pine Island. I think the best tournament belonged to Owatonna, though. They were so dang good, specifically on Saturday. They won. I don't think they were not seeded to win either of these weights, but they got titles at 100 from Kayla Pastica, who came into the tournament as the number 2 seed. She pinned her way through the tournament, had a record of 10-7 going into the tournament. So I guess what that kind of tells me there, Owatonna just wrestles a ton of very legit competition throughout the year. But Kayla Pastica rolled through it at 100 pounds. At 106, Lucinda Ornalis, I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong, Lucinda, but she came into the tournament as the number 5 seed, had a record of 11-10, beat the 4 seed, beat the 1 seed, beat the 2 seed to win the 106-pound section title. And then Aaliyah Fisher up at, I don't have it in front of me. Let's see if I can pull it up here. I think she's at 155. But she was not quite the upset story. What the heck is going on here? Here we go. Teams, Owatonna. She was not quite the upset story that, they were down at 106 or even 100 had to beat some really good wrestlers to win that title, but she got the job done at 148, excuse me. And then if you notice this here, all 6 of their place winners, I'm talking to the people on the YouTube page who can see this if you're listening back on the podcast, but every single one of their place winners won their final match. They got first, third, first, fifth. I think that goes a long way in proving that you're wrestling all the way through the tournament. So I would give like an A++ to Owatonna, which is a team that admittedly I have not seen their girls wrestle a ton this year, but I thought they had a fantastic tournament. So Pine Island, Chatfield, Owatonna, for me, those are kind of the ones leading the way in girls wrestling right now. Some really solid tournaments from those 3 programs. Flusher Fixer, thanks for the help. Yep, 148 there. He's on top of his game. As we advance here with the girls section tournament talk, there was a group of teams that I don't know if I want to say pleasantly surprised by, but a group of teams that I think remains somewhat underrated here in southeastern Minnesota. I've got 4 of these teams. Dover Yoda. They have a bunch of wrestlers. Sneakily, they have a bunch of wrestlers. They had 10 girls in this section tournament. They've got some nice depth. They're spread throughout their lineup. They just had their first ever state qualifier. That was Peyton Welsh, who qualified for state at 235, if you can believe it. A Welsh going to state for Dover Yoda. And then this wrestler kind of popped to me as well from Dover Yoda. Peyton Gifford down at 106. Made it to the section final. Ended up getting third there, but I had not seen Peyton wrestle this year. I thought she's tough, scrappy. That's going to be a bright future there. And then I also noticed they have a girls coach, which, you know, those you don't take those for granted. I looked on the State High School League, and I believe that is Evangeline Chittinavong, who is a Rochester John Marshall graduate. If I'm not mistaken, baby, they have 2 girls coaches in Dover Yoda, but they're definitely doing some good stuff over there. Stewartville had their first ever state qualifier. Morgan Mannion had a really good tournament. They had a lot more girls in the lineup than I anticipated. I'm going to sort this by the number of wrestlers in the section tournament. Yeah, so Stewartville had 8 wrestlers in the section tournament. They had 5 place winners, and then, of course, their state qualifier. Just looking at the numbers here briefly, Owatonna 11, Mayo 11, Lake City and St. Charles, we'll get to them. They had 11, Chatfield, Dover Yoda, Pine Island, all 9 or 10, and then Stewartville right in there. So I think Stewartville remains to be somewhat undefeated. Lake City and St. Charles, I knew they were doing really, really well with numbers, but I did not realize quite the depth of talent these teams have. Lake City had 5 section place winners. Like I said, great depth there. They have a complete wrestling room, a lot of different ages in there, competitors. They had a state qualifier, Andrea Garcia Gardea, who had a really exciting true second match at 190. She was down late. I think it was 9-2 or something like that. Gets the big pin to head up to the state tournament. And you'd like to see every program at least get like 1 or 2 state qualifiers. Just build some of that excitement for the younger people to follow. Likewise, St. Charles, bunch of wrestlers in the tournament, came away with like 5 place winners or something like that. I'll pull up St. Charles here and see what they got going for them. Better crack one of these. That is not what you think it is. It is a Spindrift sparkling water. JV Takes is we're endorsed by Spindrift sparkling water, not by whatever Al and Josh are pouring down the drain. St. Charles, 5 place winners. 5 place winners. 112, 136, 48, 90. Again, like we said, nice balance, a lot of different ages in the wrestling room. A lot of good things going on with the St. Charles girls wrestling program. Rochester Mayo and Byron, I've got notes on them. We kind of know them as a couple pioneers of girls wrestling. Olivia Martinez. I shouldn't even say pioneers of girls wrestling, but Rochester Mayo and Byron leading the way in the last 4 years of girls wrestling being a sanctioned sport. They continue to lead the way. Good depth there. Hattie Matthews headed back to state. Katie Augenstein back to state for Byron. And then I mentioned Olivia Martinez. I think she was the only state qualifier for Rochester Mayo, but I just think she has such a high ceiling. I think she could do some serious damage up at the state tournament. Yep. So, boom, there you go. 7 place winners at sections for Rochester Mayo. So, I don't know. A lot of teams that had very nice tournaments, and I'm probably being a little bit generous, being Mr. Positive here. I don't think it benefits anybody to come in and point out all the negatives, but I mean, a lot of good things to like Friday and Saturday at the girls section tournament. As we continue, a couple programs, I've got 2 programs that I would say trending in the right direction, or maybe good things to come, big things to come would be the right category for this one. Cass and Manorville, they only had, did they have 4 girls wrestle in the section tournament maybe? 4 or 5? So they had 3 place winners, and they had 4 girls wrestling in the section tournament. So placing 3 out of 4, that's really good. Obviously, the highlight for them, Eliana O'Donohue, who completely stuck up on me. She got a 1 seed. She was having a fantastic season, and it went right underneath my nose. Blew right through the mustache. I didn't even realize it. She's the first ever state qualifier for Cass and Manorville. And one of the reasons that I think Cass and Manorville has good things coming for them is because KM has all sorts of resources. They have a wrestling community. They have a community that supports the sport. You know, there's going to be tons of good wrestling knowledge. There's going to be good coaches. There's going to be wrestling facility. There's going to be time and energy and resources poured into wrestling in Cass and Manorville. So keep eyes on that program. I think basically all of those girls are under 9th grade. 9th grade and under, maybe 7th and 8th graders. But, you know, as long as they stick with it, there's a little bit of extra turnover with girls wrestling just because a lot of them are so new to the sport, giving it a try. But if some of these KM girls stick it out, you got to believe that it's only a matter of time before that girls program is somewhat of a force to be reckoned with. La Crescent, the Kabat sisters down low. I got to see them for the first time this year. They're tough. Zoe Bly, she was tougher than nails. I'm trying to think who she wrestled in her semifinal at 136 that kind of jumped out to me as, you know, La Crescent continues to build things on both the boys and girls side. 136. That's right. Yes. So we're standing there and we're watching the semifinals on Saturday morning, and Hattie Mathery, returning state finalist, she's out there in her semifinal, and this La Crescent girl is just battling with her late into the third, and it's only like a 1 or 2 takedown deficit. And I'm guy next to me, I'm like, who is that pushing Hattie Mathery? Pulled up the bracket, and it was Zoe Bly of La Crescent Hoka, who she dropped that match to Hattie, but then went into wrestlebacks and ends up taking 4th to a really, really tough Kate Vermilia. So, no, I think there's good things to come for both La Crescent and Cass and Manorville. A couple more teams I want to touch on, and then we can move to any questions or boys section tournament. Give another spin of the wheel of topics. So I would call this group of teams, these 3 teams, I think the Marines has a saying, the few, the proud, the strong. I would say that's what these 3 teams are. Northfield, ZM, and Cannon Falls, but especially Northfield and Cannon Falls. Northfield only had 3 wrestlers in the section tournament. They had 2 place winners, 2 state qualifiers. Of course, Alina Johnson and Callie Graber, who continues to lead the way in girls wrestling in the present moment. She's just so dominant right now. And then Cannon Falls, really solid tournament for them as well. They only had 2 wrestlers. They had Monette Otterness and Elena Williams, I believe, down low at 100 pounds, but they were both seeded third. They both got third. You want to try and get one of those through, but tough brackets for both of those where they were at, and still a strong tournament for those two. Zabrota Mazeppa. Cougars brought, if I'm grading their section tournament as well, maybe they don't get Owatana's A++, but they get like an A or an A-. They're really putting the A in Mazeppa here. But it was a good tournament for them. They had 5 wrestlers. All 5 placed. They qualified 2 wrestlers for the state tournament, and they're walking around wearing some pretty cool shirts for warm-ups as well. So, girls section tournament. My big picture takeaways there. Mayo Civic Center was fantastic. There continue to be some programs that just really do great positive things that get big thumbs up, and then some other programs moving in the right direction as well. These programs are kind of all over the place with where they're at with girls wrestling right now. There's obviously programs that don't have any girls in the lineup right now. I think naturally it's just going to be tougher for these small schools that also have dance and girls basketball programs. They're going to be challenged to fill out a girls wrestling roster, but there's programs that don't have any girls. There's programs that have a handful, and then there's programs who have full rosters and lineups that are doing some pretty good things. So, questions, comments, points of concern. If we add, Flusher Fixer, I hear you. If we add in Section 2, Grand Meadow did a pretty darn good job as well. I wonder if I can pull that tournament up quick here. G-1, G-2. I don't know how to do that. If I had a producer here, this is on you. This is on you, Ankle Rider. All right, we're going to take Flusher Fixer's word for it. Grand Meadow had a great tournament as well. Ankle Rider 1 says your one-liners are dynamite. Thank you, Ankle Rider. You're much appreciated. Where is Ankle Rider's handle? Says Flush. Okay. Ankle Rider says, to recap, programs are moving in the right direction and others are doing great things. Nailed it. All right. I think we better give the wheel a spin here and see what our next topic is here. A lot of people are crossing their fingers. A lot of people hoping for dating life. They want that dating life update or goats and sheep. Oh! It is dating life. Good thing I have my skip. I've not played my Uno skip card yet. I'm going to play my skip card. All right, we've got sponsors. We've got goats and sheep. We got team sections. All right, let's hit sponsors. Sponsors it is. Huge thank you to all of the sponsors that make local wrestling coverage possible through JV Takes, including our good friends at Culver's of Rochester, the North Culver's. Sure, you bet. The South Culver's. Yeah, all right, South Culver's. It's all good. All sorts of good, healthy options for the wrestlers. All sorts of ice cream options for myself. Big ice cream guy. It's probably going to be my hottest take of the night. Ice cream is very, very good. So thank you to our friends at Culver's Guerrilla Wrestling Club. They've got all sorts of stuff going on this time of year if you're looking to supplement your training. I know, especially in this day and age, I was just talking to a coach who is also a parent and has a young athlete this weekend, and they're talking about how back in the day, you could come to wrestling practice. You could put your heart and soul into it. You could work really hard. And then you could walk out of the room, be done with wrestling. You could take your Sundays off, relax. And, you could get to the state tournament doing that. You could achieve some pretty great things like that. But in this day and age, if wrestling is your hope in your dream and you're somebody that wants to do great things and you want to stand on top of the podium, it's often pretty hard to hit those goals that are up here if you're not doing extra stuff. So look into the guerrilla wrestling clubs of the world, the Min USAs of the world, and stuff like that. Lodemeier's Incorporated of Goodhue. Thank you to our friends at Lodemeier's Incorporated, local grain equipment dealer. I know Ankle Rider 1, he bought a tractor from them. Oh, when did he buy that tractor? I don't know, but he's been pushing snow with it, and he decided to go without the cab. So he told me he's been pretty cold this winter, but he does love the tractor, and he loves the service, and he loves the respect and treatment that he got at Lodemeier's Incorporated out of Goodhue. So I would consider them. Our friends at the Clash, of course, the Clash National Wrestling Duels, always at the beginning of January. It's the best way to start the years with the Clash National Duels. Consider getting your team in there if you have not participated in years past, or if you're just a fan. Go down to La Crosse and partake in the good times. Heman Tree Service out of the Red Wing, Goodhue, Zumbrota area. Cannon Falls even, I would say. I think Riley's over in the Cannon Falls region. They do a very nice job. They're professional and risk their lives, not yours. They're the professionals. They'll get their hard hats on. They'll take care of your trees. I don't think they do shrubs, but if anyone here is considering, I would send them a message and just be funny about it. Ask them if they trim shrubs or do anything gardening-wise or like that. So Heman Tree Service, you can find them on Facebook. They've got a phone number there. Those are our wonderful sponsors. All right. We got 2 topics left here. We've got team sections, and we've got goats and sheep. Goats and sheep. All right, one listener hit the text line, says, we want a dating update. Another listener, I'll let you guys guess who this one, says that they have a new prospect for me. So, okay, all right, well, we'll keep the dating in the back of our mind. We're going to have to respin. We do not have Ankle Rider here, so there will be no goat nor sheep talk. So we'll spin it one more time, see what it comes up with here. Well, how about that? It's going to be team sections. Tis the best time of year, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I'm going to close out of the wheel of names. Excuse me, the wheel of topics. And we are going to pull up section brackets. We're going to start with AAA. We're going to give those guys their respect. The nice thing about AAA seating this year is it seemed to be pretty straightforward. Rochester Century beat everybody. Then, of course, all these teams are Big 9 teams. So you're going to see each other throughout the regular season. Things are going to shake out pretty smoothly, and they did. Rochester Century, the 1 seed. Albert Lee is the 2 seed. Northfield's the 3 seed. Owatonna and Rochester Mayo will wrestle in the opening round as the 4 and the 5 seed. That's probably going to be the best quarterfinal match, or at least on paper. What are we doing here? My computer's... Nope, don't do that. Okay, that's good. That's probably going to be the best quarterfinal in this one. I have not heard whether or not all of these matches are going to get wrestled. Sometimes you'll see it where if the 8 seed believes that they don't really have a chance, then they'll just forfeit the match and they'll get ready for the next week of wrestling with individual sections or whatnot. But AAA is going to be fun this year. The biggest storyline, obviously, I've been banging this drum all year long, but Rochester Century winning their first ever Big 9 title. They've got a chance to do something special this year and go to state for the first time in program history. But it's going to be challenging because when they wrestled Rochester Mayo during the season, Rochester Mayo was a little bit shorthanded. Century beat them something like 55-9, but if they potentially meet up the next time around, it's definitely going to be a more challenging semifinal if it's Rochester Mayo. If it's Owatonna, I got a feeling that was a pretty close duel as well. I'm going to pull up my Magic Section 1 spreadsheet. So Century's last time over Owatonna was 43-23. That's a 20-point win. That's not insurmountable for Owatonna, so Rochester Century is going to have to bring that. And I'll also note that Thursday night in AAA, they wrestle the quarters and the semis because they only have 8 teams, so there's no need to save any semifinals to Saturday. They wrestle both of those duels on Thursday night. So Century will wrestle JM, then they'll wrestle the winner of Rochester, Mayo, and Owatonna. I feel good about Century's chances to get through to Saturday, but also knowing there's a real chance that they get tested in the semifinals. Because we saw Century throughout the month of January, they're pretty banged up. They had some health issues. I don't know if it was health. I never know exactly what is going on with some of these teams, but I know Century had some rocky moments in January, so if they're back at what they were in December, I think they're still the favorite here. On the other side of the bracket, we mentioned Albert Lee is the 2 and Northfield is the 3. They're both going to be healthy favorites in the opening round, which would set us up for, I'm not going to quite say like an iconic matchup, but Albert Lee and Northfield have wrestled the last couple years in the section finals. Albert Lee's gotten the better of those matchups. I'm sure Northfield would like to get them back if they match up in the semifinals. And then Albert Lee most likely poses the biggest threat to Century. That was the closest Big 9 match. I stand corrected. Northfield had a really tight match with Century as well. So Century beat Albert Lee 30-26. They beat Northfield 36-32. I know for sure the Albert Lee one came down to heavyweight, and it literally took Century a last-second takedown to win that match within like the last 30 or 40 seconds or whatever. So I said Century's the favorite. Maybe not by much. Maybe if I'm giving like betting odds, maybe it's something like Century 40%, Albert Lee 30%, Northfield 25%, the field 5%. Or something like that if I'm trying to be the Vegas sports book of high school sports. But, yeah, it's a completely different look in AAA this year. I think it's refreshing. In years, the last couple years, we'll call it the JV Takes era. Since JV Takes started, Northfield and Albert Lee were kind of both just shoo-ins to the section final, and we were waiting to see which one of those teams went back up to the state tournament. Obviously, great programs. Albert Lee for decades, and then Northfield's been special for the last, 10 years or whatever. So we've gotten plenty accustomed to Albert Lee and Northfield wrestling in big matches, but this year, having Century as a player is pretty special. This is a special year of AAA wrestling. So we'll bounce down to AA. I'm going to see if we got any smart remarks in the comments that I need to address before we get there. Was that your Tinder tab that you just hit? No, I am not on Tinder. I only use Christian Mingle and Farmers Only. I filter all my dating prospects through both of those sites. If they don't qualify for one of them, they are not a prospect. Okay. We're heading down to AA. So I thought seeding in AA was going to be pretty straightforward, but based on the conversations that I had at the end of last week, seeding was maybe not as straightforward as it looked to be. I thought Simley was going to be a surefire number 1 seed, and ultimately they did get to be the number 1 seed. But it sounded like there were actually some pretty real conversations about whether or not they belonged as the number 1 seed or Cass and Manorville belonged at the number 1 seed. I don't know if this is true or not, but supposedly KM placed higher at some individual tournaments in team point-wise. For me, that doesn't do a lot. I get that, yes, it is finishing in front of them, and when there's not a direct head-to-head result, that's something that can come up throughout the conversation. For me, it was the common opponent. I mean, KM sneaking past ZM with a 2-3 point victory it was, and then Simley with a big old 49-9 on ZM. that was the only section opponent for Simley, and for me, that was enough evidence to hand Simley a 1 seed, but it sounds like there were some conversations between Simley and KM as the 1 seed. Obviously, both of these teams very well respected. Simley's won, I think, like 6 of the last 7 state titles. KM has been to the state finals the last 2 years, and then, if you do recall, KM snapped the Simley streak last year when they beat them in the state semis. So this is shaping up to be a good one. Simley gets the number 1 seed. In their quadrant of the bracket, they've got 8 seed Lake City and 9 seed Stewartville making the trip up on Thursday night. I like these earlier duel times, too. Without the JV wrestlers, they're going to start that one at 5 o'clock. Just a traditional, historic Section 1 match there. Lake City and Stewartville wrestling up in Simley. What screams Section 1 wrestling more than a Thursday night duel up in Inver Grove Heights? In the ZM quadrant of the bracket, we're going to go to KM because they got the number 2 seed with wins over both ZM and Pine Island. They drew 7th seeded Cannon Falls and 10th seeded Byron coming to KM on Thursday night. I was a little bit surprised to see Cannon Falls as the 7th seed. I thought they could potentially get a 6th seed. I know Waseca didn't have a ton of Section 1 opponents. They lost to Pine Island. They narrowly beat Lake City, maybe 35-33 or something like that. I think they narrowly beat Lake City. Yeah, that's correct. So came down to a coach's vote there, I guess, between the 6 and the 7. Either way, you're going to have a tough matchup. Either you got to go through KM or you got to go through ZM. I don't think there's a ton of potential for upsets here in the quarterfinals with just how good the top 4 teams are in AA. But Byron and Cannon Falls, like we said, they're going to wrestle. Winner will get KM, and then ZM and Waseca, 3 seed and 6 seed, are squaring off in Mazeppa on Thursday night. 4 seed Pine Island hosts 5 seed Plainview Elgin Millville. I think that's obviously the best potential match on Thursday night in AA. I love my PM Bulldogs. I love my Pine Island Panthers. I'm feeling a lot better about my Panthers in this situation, especially after watching what they did last Thursday night against Goodhue. It was 58 to something. It was a pretty big number for Pine Island. They seem to be wrestling really well right now, while Plainview Elgin Millville maybe a little bit banged up. But hey, you never know. Plainview Elgin Millville, real tough down low. They might be able to keep it tight and give themselves a chance through the middle and upper weights. So, big picture thoughts here. 1 AA. We need somebody. We need somebody to do it here. KM, ZM, Pine Island in the semis. Really need somebody to get it done here. I was doing a little bit of advanced scouting because I'm going to be doing the live stream on Saturday, and I was just looking at the Simley lineup, and that team is so darn good. They're so darn good from top to bottom. It sounds like they've got an injury down low that is one that's going to sting a little bit, but they've filled that spot. They've got wrestlers down there. They're going to be solid top to bottom. They're going to roll out a 500 or better wrestler at every single weight class. And if you're going to beat Simley, you're going to have to get a big pin somewhere. You're going to have to pull off an upset. You're going to have to minimize bonus points. And that is one of the reasons I think Pine Island potentially could be a scary, challenging matchup for them in the semis. Not saying it's going to happen. Not calling my shot. Not screaming you're the Panther. I'm saying Pine Island's got a couple kids in their lineup, specifically down low, that can pin, that can make some big moves happen. And if the ghosts of the Civic Center come out on Saturday morning, well, these other teams in 1AA that are non-Simley teams, they're going to need to make those ghosts of the Civic Center show up on Saturday. So Simley, in my mind, a healthy favorite. But like I said, a lot of discussion about whether or not they or KM deserve the 1 seed. KM beat them last year. These 2 teams are pretty similar to last year, so I probably have a little bit more fear over Simile than I should. So, ZMKM, obviously, that's going to be a great one in the semis. Both of those teams are on healthy streaks of making the section finals in however X amount of years. KM, and anytime they meet up, it's going to be close. It's going to be exciting. Anybody could win that one, and then, hopefully we get some good matches against Simile. Somebody get it done, please. Double A. We're going to move to single A. Not looking at a ton of individual wrestlers tonight. We got a question in the comments there. No, we're going to keep the focus on team tonight. And then I think potentially Friday night we'll maybe do a live stream. We'll talk about matchups on Saturday. And then next week, maybe like next Tuesday or Wednesday, I'll hopefully put together a little cheat sheet to preview Section 1 individuals. We'll go, hey, here's who's coming in at 139 pounds. Who's coming in at 145 pounds, and we'll maybe do more of a look at individual wrestlers next week. All right, this is where things get interesting. This was the most interesting seeding here in Section 1A. When it's all said and done, Chatfield gets the number 1 seed. Of course, the big blemish, I don't even know if I'd call it a blemish, the most significant loss on their schedule, LARP, to open the season. Still, despite that, Chatfield draws the number 1 seed. They'll host 8-seeded La Crescent Hoka along with 9th-seeded Wabasha Kellogg on Thursday night. The number 2 seed, when it's all said and done, Goodhue comes away with the number 2 seed. They're going to host Fillmore Central on Thursday night at 6 o'clock. Fillmore Central got the 7th seed. 3-seed Caledonia Houston will host 6-seeded St. Charles. And what I love about this 1A bracket today, I was talking to a friend about this. I love that there's good Thursday night matches. I love that there's semifinals with a lot of uncertainty. And I love that any team 1 through 4, maybe if I'm feeling frisky and crazy, maybe 1 through 5, maybe 1 through 6, could pop through to a section final. Love the parity in 1A this year. Very refreshing compared to years past where last year you kind of knew Chatfield was going to be in the section final. Fun match was seeing if it was going to be a Goodhue or KW that popped through. The year before, the fun was kind of seeing if KW was going to find a way to knock off that Chatfield juggernaut. So I guess the last couple of years there's been exciting elements to the 1A team tournament. But this year, like I said, I think there's a lot more parity across the board, as is highlighted by that 3 versus 6 matchup, Caledonia Houston and St. Charles. That was just an 11-point match when those teams wrestled maybe last week or within the last 2 weeks. Best match of the night could be the 3-6 on Thursday night, or it could be the 4-5. Lewiston, Altura, Rushford, Peterson came away with the 4 seed. They wrestle 5th-seeded Dover Iota, or they will wrestle 5th-seeded Dover Iota, I should say. Last time those two teams wrestled, LARP beat them by 13. And right now with LARP, there are so many question marks in the air. Spam question marks in the comments on the YouTube page because we have no idea what their lineup is going to look like. We have no idea what their team is at right now. And I think there was... I shouldn't even say that there was like frustration from people in the Lewiston, Altura, Rushford, Peterson communities for getting the 4 seed. I think most people understand how this happened. Yes, great start to the season for Lewiston, Altura, Rushford, Peterson. They beat Chatfield. They have a good stretch right through the middle of the season. Beginning of January hits, they tie and lose to Caledonia Houston on criteria. Okay, tough loss, but that's not a nail in the coffin. As the season transpires, though, the last 3 weeks look something like this. January 22nd, they wrestle their full lineup. They look good. January 24th, that Saturday, they're in Lake City for an individual tournament. They only have 3 starters in the lineup. There's some questions. Oh, is it match count? Is it health? What's going on there? Following week, they had to pull out of matches against Goodhue and ZM. The next day, I think it was 29th. They pulled out of matches against Goodhue and ZM. The 30th, they had to pull out of conference duels against St. Charles and Fillmore Central, which I've been told if those are not wrestled, those are essentially forfeits. So you go from losing only one section match, only one conference match against Caledonia, to then having those marks on your record against Fillmore Central and St. Charles. You wanted to get the match in against Goodhue and a section opponent. If you wrestle that one and you win, if you wrestle St. Charles and Fillmore Central and do what you're supposed to do, LARP's probably the 1 seed. Maybe the 2 seed if Chatfield still finds a way to the 1, but you're most likely the 2 seed. But for things that I'm going to guess are completely out of LARP's control, the last 3 weeks were just really tough. They had to miss matches. They had wrestlers out of the lineup. It dropped them down to the 4 seed. But like I said last night on the forum when I was getting happy fingers, LARP is still in such a good position here. If they are actually back to full health, if taking those couple weeks off to get everyone healthy, if it actually gets them back to 100% and they're wrestling at their best, it's going to work out for them, and they're going to be able to pat themselves on the back when this is all said and done and say, we handled this exactly like we should. Well done, everybody. So for them, it's Dover Iota again. They beat Dover Iota by 13 last time. If they win that one, it's Chatfield. They beat Chatfield to start the year. They're the only Section 1 team that beat Chatfield this year. If you're LARP, you've been through a ton in the last 3 weeks. You have seen many lives flash before your eyes in the last 3 weeks, but you are still in a golden position to make something great happen. So I have no idea. Could be Dover Iota making it to the semi. Could be LARP. Chatfield's going to be there most likely waiting. Chatfield is going to be there waiting. And I think if it's the Screaming Eagles in the semis, I think they have a chance to get it done against Chatfield again. I'm not going to say they're favored. I'm going to say they've got a shot. They've got a puncher shot to make it happen, especially with some of those dynamic wrestlers that LARP has in the lineup. Those big home run hitters. So that's me now getting off my soapbox. We'll bounce back over to the other side of the bracket for a second. I think I already said this point, but we're going to beat this dead horse. To heck with it. Caledonia Houston could get it done against St. Charles again. The Saints could close the gap. They could get to the semis. Goodhue's most likely going to be in the semis. And then that one is really, really hard to predict because, as has been noted, Goodhue was not able to get many section teams on the schedule this year. So what does a potential matchup against St. Charles look like? What does a potential matchup against Caledonia look like? We're not exactly sure. That's a question mark. Who's going to be in the section finals? Don't know. Can't project the section finals. Parity in 1A is the best. I think you guys can kind of tell which section tournament I'm most dialed into and most fired up about right now. So that is Section 1A seating and brackets. I'm going to check the message boards here very quickly. Awesome. Yeah, Section 1A is going to be great this year. A couple other random questions I have thrown at me. Where should I go on Thursday night? What is going to be the best night of wrestling on Thursday night? Thank you to listener Clyde from Belchester for that message. Well, if Caledonia wasn't on the other side of the face, I would say that one would be a good one to go to. I think I would go watch Dover Iota and LARP wrestle. I think that's going to be good. Flip a coin between LARP and Dover Iota and Pine Island and Plainview, Elgin Millville. Go see one of those. Or actually, since AAA semis are on Thursday night. Or you could see Albert Lee Northfield. But Albert Lee's on the other side of the planet as well. So choose between those three. Question says, is LARP healthy? I do not know. Who is most likely to go on an upset run? I don't know. Define upset run, I guess. I'll pick a team in each class here just for the heck of it. We'll start with AAA again. Mayo. I guess Mayo at the 5 seed is somewhat dangerous. If they are healthy, I just have a hard time seeing them getting past a full-strength Century. Northfield, maybe? If Northfield finds a way to beat Albert Lee, they had a tight match with Century last time. I guess I would say if there's going to be a team in AAA to go on a little bit of an upset run, I would say Northfield probably, because you can't pick a top 2 seed and call it an upset run. I thought if a 3 seed wins the section, I'll call that a good little upset run. So in AAA, I'll go with Northfield. They've got the best shot to do something special. In AA, I think it's Pine Island. You guys know me. I'm a Pine Island Bobo. Or at least this year, I'm a Pine Island Bobo. Yeah, I think so. PEM's a little bit banged up. Tough part's going to be getting past Simley in the semis, but you never know. Like you said, Pine Island's got some pinners. The ghost of the Civic Center. You never know if there's a funky injury default or something. I guess if there's a non-top 2 seed team to go on a little run in 1AA, I'd probably go with Pine Island. Yeah, maybe. I wouldn't really call it an upset if ZM's the 3 seed and they beat 2 seed KM to get to the section finals. So I guess in AA, I'd go with Pine Island, the team that could potentially go on a little upset run if we're going to call it that. And then 1A, I think it's got to be LARP, right? They fall to the 4 seed. They're a little bit banged up. If they get past Dovriota, if they're at full health, they beat Chatfield last time, they could be a 4 seed in the section final. It could be a 4 seed that wins the section tournament. I don't know. St. Charles? Maybe? Could the Saints? They've got a nice deep lineup up into the middle weights. They've got good balance from 107 up to 52, 60, 72. They were tight with Cal last time. I saw them wrestle Goodhue in the opening round last year, the section tournament. They gave the Wildcats a pretty good fight. It's been a while since St. Charles has been to the Civic Center on Civic Center Saturday. That would be fun. That would be real fun to see the Saints in their orange. It's crazy to think the good wrestlers that have came through St. Charles between, the Ball brothers and Beringa and the Himes. Oh, my gosh. Just saying those names sends shivers down my spine. You think some of the good wrestlers that have came through there, and it's been a while since they've been to the Civic Center, which blows my mind. That would be a very fun story. Definitely trending in the right direction, the orange people are. So I'm going with LARP, though. If there's going to be one team that goes on a little miracle run here in 1AA, I'm going to go Screaming Eagles. Other questions. Can anyone beat Simley? I feel like I kind of already answered that one. Would be challenging. Very challenging. I wouldn't put it past any of these 1AA teams, though. They're all going to have a fighting chance. Is Kyle chasing goats? No, Kyle is being a father. Maybe he's chasing goats. Dating life update. I went to see Ella Langley this weekend. I went to the Eric Church Ella Langley concert Saturday night after girls sections, and my dating life update is if Ella Langley wanted, and now I'll preface this by saying I'm an old-fashioned guy. I'm pretty old-fashioned. If the good Lord says, Logan, you're getting married, I would say to him, all right, I'd prefer she take my last name. But if Ella Langley said, Logan, you got to take my last name, I would consider it. I would ask her to explain herself first, because that's kind of an unusual request. And then, or if she said, I want you to hyphenate your last name, I'd be like, I'd prefer not to. But I would consider it. That is as far as I'll go with my dating life update. Ella Langley has spent a lot of time in my mind since Saturday nights. Oh. All right. I think that empties out all of the listener questions. Good little 55-minute run from us there. And that's going to wrap it up. So, as always, thanks to all our sponsors. Like I said, Friday night, you guys, I'm going to try and get on the old YouTube machine, and we'll potentially stack some lineups and talk about what's coming Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon at the Civic Center. But it is the best time of year. Wrestlers, stay healthy, stay committed to the diet, try and sprint through the end of the season if you can. Make the most of it, because it's gonna fly by in the blink of an eye. And these are the memories you and your buddies are gonna be talking about 30 years down the road. You guys are gonna be getting together to talk about that spladle that they hit in the section semis on the edge of the mat, or that big upset at 215 that sealed the deal. So good memories going to be made this week. We wish you guys all the best of luck, and we'll get together again soon to talk about goats and sheep and wrestling and dating.